Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach.
Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. Today it's Laura and I am in my new office. So if you happen to be on YouTube or get to see the video here, I'm super stoked. I've been waiting for this since I moved into my new house. I've been waiting for my new office to be built. I finally moved in. It feels so good. And what's cool is that when I built this office, it was for this podcast and for video in mind. And I love the dark moodiness, the brick, the more masculine. It's so different than I'm used to being in spaces. I'm used to being in big, white, bright spaces, and it feels so good to be in this darker, moodier, Laura 2.0 space. So, welcome to our podcast today. I'm going to be bringing a topic that we did not learn in our original certification, but that it is very prevalent in all of the professional coaching that I have received in the last 5 years. And it will definitely be a lesson in the Nurse Life Coach Academy certification that you'll be hearing about soon. So I wanted to bring this episode to you guys because I think that this is an underused tool and deepening process for nurse coaches. I also think it's a more masculine energy to it, this particular skill. And a lot of nurse coaches, we tend to stay in the feminine. And it's because of our training, and there's nothing wrong with it. And for the most part, coaching has a lot of feminine qualities to it. So I'm going to teach you about challenging, what challenging is, when to use it. I'm going to give you some case studies. I'm going to give you some examples, and then I'm going to ask you some questions that you can kind of mull over in your own head just to have a pulse on maybe some potential you've been leaving on the table with your clients. So first, what is challenging? So challenging is a request that stretches the client way beyond their self-imposed limits. It kind of shakes up the way that they see themselves. A challenge, kind of like a request, when we request a client to try something, it includes 3 parts. Okay. 1, it's a specific action that's in line with the client's agenda. So again, we do not create our own agenda here. We don't challenge people to do what we think they should do. We challenge them in relation to something that we are co-creating with them. 2, what is the conditions of satisfaction if they complete this challenge? And 3, a date or time of completion. We do challenging in the Successful Nurse Coach programs by doing things like the 300 challenge or doing the no challenge or the connection challenge, like the name of it. We actually do a challenge. And in that challenge, it's usually way more activity than most people think they can do, will do, or is possible for them to do. And then in completing the challenge, it just expands them and expands their capacity in ways that you can't imagine. Now, in one-on-one coaching, we don't get to do like group challenges. So challenging is kind of bringing that to your coaching container. So for example, let me give you an example. Your client says, I want to get at least 6 hours of sleep every night this week. And the coach says, that's a great commitment, but I'm wondering if I could challenge you here. And the client says, sure. What do you have in mind? I said, you mentioned a few weeks ago that you got 8 hours of sleep and it felt so good the next day. I was wondering if we can add to your goal that you get 2 nights of 8-hour sleep since you've been exhausted lately. The client, I don't know how I can get 2 nights, but I'll commit to 1 night. I'll have my husband get up with the kids on Saturday. Well, this example is like a pretty mild challenge. We used a challenge to at least expand what the client thought might be possible by challenging with something much bigger. The art of challenging is, it's like a challenge, but it's a lot bigger than what the client thinks they can do. And there's a fantastic term that I learned very early in my coaching career called a BHAG, B-H-A-G. And that is a big, hairy, audacious goal. I have a big, hairy, audacious goal on my board in front of me. for something that we're doing. And I look at it every single day, and it's broken down exactly how this goal, this happens to be a revenue goal, but it's broken down exactly how it's going to be achieved. I look at it every single day. I meditate on it every single day. I've never not written one down that didn't come true. So I challenge myself in eyesight. This is kind of like the vision board concept, right? It's like if we're looking at a challenge all the time, it's going to expand our capacity. It's incredibly expanding to see something that seems impossible, but to look at it in every single day and get acquainted with it. Okay. The playful term of BHAG is like a great representation of how we can just call somebody forward in our coaching with them. And if the challenge is powerful enough, the client should sit right up and say, no way, I can't. That's too much. Or it's not enough time. Or I don't think I can. Or how I don't even know how. There'll be like initial resistance to it. If that's the case, then you know you're probably playing in the right area. And oftentimes we play in the realm of possible, of like creating really reasonable SMART goals. Everything's kind of reasonable. Everything's kind of linear. Everything's kind of status quo. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. And some clients, guess what? They don't need to be challenged. It's just the wrong approach to take. But every once in a while, I think that we leave a lot of potential on the table by not shaking it up with our clients, right? So as you become more seasoned, you'll realize that your idea of potential in humans is so much higher than those of your clients, because once you've been in the self-development world, the coaching world, especially the entrepreneurial world, you realize everything's kind of all made up. And I remember this very clearly when this really hit me, my own potential hit me. I'm going to give you a side story. I've said it before in the podcast, but it's worth mentioning again. I remember probably 8 months after certification, 8 months into my private practice, things were going well. I remember sitting on my couch one day and sensing like that feeling like, oh my God, I can probably do anything that I want. Like if I really wanted to be a surgeon, I could probably be a surgeon. And I don't know why surgeon came to mind, probably because I just always had so much reverence for that role. It just seemed like the most badass thing that you could possibly do, more so than anything else on the planet, because you're cutting into flesh and you're holding human lives in your hands. And probably because at the time I was watching a lot of Grey's Anatomy, to be honest. But I never thought I could be a surgeon. That never entered into my mind. I was a circulating nurse. I watched surgeons. I've interacted with surgeons. It's not something I ever thought I could do. I really subconsciously thought surgeons were special. And when I really examined that belief, I can see where it came from. But sitting on the couch that day, it was clear. It's like, actually, Laura, if you wanted to become a surgeon, you could. It would take a while. It'd take a lot of money, take a lot of time. But if you wanted to be a surgeon, if you wanted to cut people for a living, even if it's right now in your late 30s, you could. Why couldn't you? And that was like my brain unlocked that day. Now, I didn't want to be a surgeon, but I could. I just want to give that distinction. So then the question becomes, well, what do you really, really want? And what would you think about? What would you dream about if you knew you couldn't fail? If you knew anything was truly in your reach? If you could turn off the limiting belief programming in your brain just temporarily and then take consistent action towards something, what is possible for us in our lives is so unimaginably larger than we've been led to believe. When we were children, we believed this. When we were children, we believed we could be anything. And then through conditioning and trauma and life and regular stuff and paying bills and going to school and car payments and whatever, our worlds shrink and get really, really small. And oftentimes when our clients hire us, they haven't been expanded in any way possible. Challenging is a great way to expand them. It's a great way to create possibility instead of probability. Okay. When you're in the business of transformation, hero stories become fresh and frequent in your mind. Like you see this with clients, you have it for yourself. And then your belief of what's possible just gets bigger. And when people spend time with me or Shelby, We have lots of clients that I would say this about. There's lots of coaches I've worked with that are this way. But when you sit and spend time with somebody who is expanded in that way, who truly knows that anything's possible, it rubs off on you. And challenging is an opportunity for you to be that with and for your client. Okay. Another thing that's really cool is if you start challenging your clients, you use this effectively, and they start meeting your expectations, your own belief in your clients gets bigger, which makes you a better coach. I can't tell you how many times that Shelby and I have been surprised by clients. And so at some point, we both realized that anytime we were projecting onto a client what we thought was possible for them, it was usually limiting. It very rarely was expanding. And then we got kind of proven wrong. And now we expect people to do really well. We expect people to be able to expand. Like my heart rate doesn't go up when somebody's freaking out because I just know what they're capable of. I've seen it. There's proof. So the more that we challenge, the more proof that we have that challenging works, the better we become at it. This is a type of coaching strategy and tool that gains momentum as we go. Now, who would we not want to use challenging with? Well, there is a subset of clients that tend to overcommit or overly ambitious and falling up short. We got to be careful with those kinds of clients. We don't want to challenge people to set them up for failure. And for those people, like having unrealistic expectations or dreaming big is not a problem. We don't have to flex that muscle. For those people, we have to bring them back down to earth and probably take a more transactional, systematic approach for them and breaking down something so that it can be done. But this is great for the people that you sense just haven't seen themselves the way that you see them. Clients often respond with like a dual reaction of like disbelief and exasperation while becoming a little bit more embodied in the challenge. This for me, my inner teenager responds to authority. Like if somebody says, Laura, you can't do that. Or Laura, it's going to take more than 24 months to create that. There is a little part of me that's pretty loud that says, watch me, right? Or if someone challenges me, someone tries to compete with me, whether I'm aware of it or not, there's some version of me that's like, go ahead, try to compete with me. Watch out. Like there's that energy. That can be really useful. If that's present for our client, if that's present for you as you're listening to this, the inner teenager, if she's going to help, I say use her. Be intentional, be aware, be conscious about it, but use her. I think it's a fantastic source of motivation. Okay, so I'm going to go into some case studies here.